Okay, I'll call the July 28th, 2025 meeting to order. And we don't have Kim Cohn here tonight to do our roll call, but if we could please just go around and say your name and that you were here for the record. We'll start with you, Ms. Casey.
Lori Casey.
Cindy Purdue-Dolan.
Ben Thielen.
Raylan Brandel.
Chad Silk.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw and Mr. Seppen are excused for tonight. So if we can have our Pledge of Allegiance and prayer. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, we implore you to look upon us this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our Butte-Silver community. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we may please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Okay, public comment on any item on the agenda. All right, hearing none, public comment on anything not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the study commission. Okay, so if I could move to approval of the minutes for the meetings held June 23rd and June 30th. We can start with June 23rd minutes, please.
I move for the approval of the June 23rd, 2025 minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. And how about June 30th? Can I have a motion to approve, please?
I make a motion to approve June 30th minutes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Motions carry. And thank you, Ms. Combs. Those are very detailed agenda minutes, so we appreciate that. Moving right along, our meeting with our probation clerks from the City and Justice Courts, and I understand you have a handout and a quick presentation for us, correct?
Thank you, kiddo.
All right, well, thanks for having us first. My name is Mike, and this is Rachel. We are both misdemeanor probation officers. We'll kind of give you a little rundown of what we do. So misdemeanor probation for Butte-Silver was started in 2010. At the time, it was placed under city court, and it started with one whole officer. So, and it continued that way until what, 2023?
2023.
So, and then that's when Rachel joined. I started in 2019, Rachel in 2023. So just the basics of probation. It's just a form of community supervision. It's typically ordered by a judge at the time of sentencing as an alternative to incarceration, just keep people out of jails. Everybody knows how overcrowded it is. So it's probation, it's designed to promote public safety while providing the probationer with an opportunity for rehabilitation. It's also intended to serve as a meaningful punishment that deters criminal behavior and to achieve cost savings, as I said, in comparison to keeping people locked up. A probationer is typically required to report to either myself or Rachel on a regular basis. There's certain conditions, rules that they have to follow. So just an example, some are abstaining from alcohol and drug use. They got to obey all local, state, and federal laws. Any kind of counseling that's court ordered. Examples are like domestic violence counseling, any kind of chemical dependency treatment, just things of that nature. Then we also supervise making sure people, if they're ordered restitution for theft charges, criminal mischief charges, vandalism, stuff like that, so that way they pay, make whoever the victim is whole again. And a big part of it is community service. So a lot of times people, instead of getting jail sanctions or sentenced to custody, they're released to us and they have to complete community service. So it's a way of giving back to the community. Rachel will kind of get into that a little bit more. We average probably 40 to 50 per officer, so we're close to about 100 total people on probation, and that number's just going up. It's not slowing down. We also supervise the participants in the DUI court and the Veterans Treatment Courts. And another thing we do, you might have seen them around town, is we place vehicle boots on cars, the vehicle immobilization devices. So we oversee that program as well. In community service, Rachel will tell you about that.
So, with the community service, oh, I'm sorry. Hello. Okay, so with the community service, that was a main part of why my position was created. It provides alternative sentencings to reducing jail overcrowding, alternatives for those who are indigent and cannot afford, have the ability to pay the fines. We've done a lot of cleanups in neighborhoods, alleys, basically anywhere with outside services that need help. We've done the highway cleanups. We've done a lot of parks, the food and clothing drives. We usually refer them to nonprofit organizations such as the food bank. We've worked a lot with the furniture bank, Butte Cares, the rescue mission, animal shelters. The winter they do the Snow Buddies program to help people around the neighborhoods that need help shoveling, things like that. Usually April through October has been our busiest. We did about 700 to 750-ish hours last year with everybody that we had. We usually coordinate with community enrichment and the Parks and Recreation. We do all those things and just kind of keep in contact with them, and when they need help, we organize that. So yeah, that's pretty much the extent of the community service piece.
So, and just some of the challenges we face with what we have to do. A lot of the individuals that are sentenced to us, either they're diagnosed or undiagnosed, they do have some kind of a mental health disorder. I won't say everybody, but a good portion. I don't want to put a number on it. And that lacks big time at Butte-Silver resources for mental health. I'm sure everybody's aware and everybody sees it. It's just, there ain't a lot for these people to do. There ain't a lot of help for them. We try and do our best to refer them to where we can and to make sure they take their meds, but it's difficult, you know. Another thing is just our lack of resources for just our day-to-day, especially community service. Getting people to and from. A lot of people we get, they're driving infractions, so they don't have licenses, they don't have insurance, they can't drive. We still got to get them from point A to point B. And just resources to do, you know, major lawn equipment. We don't have it. We don't have any way to transport it. We'd have weed eaters. So, you know, good luck cleaning up a big lot with a weed eater. And then the community service too in the winter. There's just not a lot to do around here. It's hard to pick up garbage when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. And just some of our goals that we would like to see is, I referenced this in the beginning, you know, we started in 2010. It was a department of 1, now we're a department of 2. We were put under city courts, but we really don't belong under city courts. We really should remain neutral between the county attorney's office, public defenders, the courts, our clients, law enforcement, everybody. So we can't look like we're working for the court, which is kind of how it looks right now. And just another goal is just, you know, stay with our post certification. We both had to, go to the academy and complete the academy. So we got to keep up on those post requirements. So, any questions?
Commissioners, follow-up questions? Mr. Thielen?
Hey, guys, thanks for being here. I got a couple questions. So, back to the 40 to 50 people per officer, and right now you're at 80 to 100, right?
Correct.
Would you guys be better served by having another officer hired on in your department?
I'm not going to say no, but.
But it would help you.
Yeah, more than
Yes.
likely.
then one more. So, is there a reason in the winter with the community service that they couldn't be out shoveling snow for the elderly people?
That is part of the Snow Buddies program. So we do.
You guys
We
do
do that,
that? Okay. All right.
Just the challenge with that is documentation, improving it.
And then why are you guys under city court? Is that because of the funding?
It's just what it was first created for the county. I don't think anybody knew what to do with it, so they just put it under city court.
Okay. So my next question would be for you, Mr. Enruth. Would they be better served under you guys, or would Butte-Silver Bow be better served if it was under the direction of you as opposed to the city court?
I was waiting for Chairwoman Brandel to ask me the question and do the, complicated runaround. It's okay, Commissioner Thielen. They need to be, they actually, as Mike said, they need to be their own independent department. In most counties, they are, the counties that have them actually, because they need to be separate from everybody. I mean, right now, they are technically funded under city court, which I think the thought process behind that is the vast majority of our misdemeanors come out of city court. So logically speaking, that's probably the best place to put it. But no, they probably most likely should be their own independent part of Butte-Silver Bow County, just so there is no appearance of they work for the county attorney's office or they work for the court itself. They're just their own independent people. We send them, the court sends these individuals there to report after being sentenced, and then they, monitor them. Another thing that I wanted to bring up that I don't think they relayed enough in this is not only are they supervising, all of these individuals and what they're doing, a lot of this entails report writing to my office, and that's because they're letting us know of any violations or anything like that that allow us to revoke sentences or to, charge people. That's a huge part of their job, which is probably why another third person in their office would be very beneficial to them. I think they were pretty nice about talking about how heavy their caseload truly is.
Other questions? Mr. Dennehy?
Sorry. This goes to the county attorney. So you're talking a little bit regarding the independent probation office in other communities. Ours is under city court. Would you recommend, and I think you just did, but a independent probation, and is it probation office? So it's Butte-Silver Bow Probation Office that has been funded under the city courts because that's where it's funded. So I guess the question would be, in terms of what the study commission could be undertaking, is make that a independent department within Butte-Silver Bow. Is that what you're recommending?
Correct.
Okay. And could you give me, other than the perspective of being independent from the county attorney's office, between the court system, between the law enforcement office, what that actually entails? So I guess what I'm asking you, if the person goes to court, a juvenile, goes to city court, not a juvenile?
Adult. They have to be an adult.
Oh, adult. Okay, very good. Thank you. So if an adult goes to court, he is given probation. And you two are the ones that read what the judge tells the probation, what the terms of probation are, right? And you have to make sure that they are in compliance with their term, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so you're thinking that because you're independent, you have no, I guess, allegiance to any of the other systems in Butte-Silver Bow. You're your own entity, you're independent, and you're looking at what this individual has to do.
Yes, so the goal of it would to remain neutral, so it doesn't look like we're working for just the county attorneys or for the courts or for law enforcement. So we're just a cog in the machine of it. That we represent the offender, but we also got to hold them accountable to what they need to do.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
And how many independent, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, how many independent probation office is there in Montana through the counties? Are all of them independent offices, or is
I
there?
don't know off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay.
But I know like Gallatin County and, well, mainly, not Gallatin, I'm sorry, Billings, they're independent. They work for, it's alternatives, I believe they're called. So
Okay.
it's- yeah.
Okay.
And then if I may, just
go
on
ahead.
that, it's similar to adult probation and parole in the felony system. They are their own independent part of the state, our state government. So they have no allegiance to this county, any other county. They simply monitor the people that are put under their supervision, and they report back to wherever they were sentenced. And what gives them their independence is their ability to, do they have to report at this time or no? Or do they run them through their own steps before they have to report them? And so they're their own individual entity when you look at it on a state level, which when you're looking at it on a county level would make sense, rather than being funded by the court and their budget coming out of the city court budget. Their budget should be independent of that, so they are fully independent themselves, rather than having the appearance of being controlled by the court. As Mike said, they are independent. They truly are. But by separating those budgets, you're going to get rid of any appearance of impropriety or anything like that.
Thank you, Matt.
I'll take Mr. Thielen, and then I'll take you, Ms. Casey.
Madam Chair, thank you. So with all that and being involved with all these people, what do you guys do with the nonviolent offenders that can't seem to get out of jail? Do you think that GPS and alcohol monitoring would help alleviate that problem?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could. I mean, everybody knows how, I'm sure you guys have heard how overcrowded and full the jail is. I will say this, though, that I don't want to put a number on it, but most of the people in custody have felonies. The jail doesn't hold a whole heck of a lot of misdemeanors. There are some, though, yes. And yes, they can be released on monitoring, alcohol testing. But that is not something we would do because we are post-conviction.
Ms. Casey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When you say you're under city court, is that by ordinance or just budget?
I believe both would be my best guess, but.
Thank you.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions. So maybe the first one is more toward the county attorney. So the fact that, and you answered my question, one of my questions earlier when you said that the felony probation is a separate entity and it is an independent office. If we're looking like on a flow chart, would it be advantageous to have felony probation, its own entity, like it is now, correct? It's that way around. And next to it have misdemeanor probation as its own separate entity, but connected as just probation? Or,
Chairman Perdue-Dolan, it doesn't work that way.
okay,
So misdemeanor probation is county to county. Felony probation is statewide. So Anaconda-Deer Lodge County doesn't have a misdemeanor probation officer. People get a suspended sentence. They're technically required to behave on their own. They're not monitored because it's not funded. Where felony probation is funded on a state level across the state through the state legislature. So we're funding our misdemeanor probation office through our county funds, which is why they're here. And then I was just briefly looking up to see if they do fall under the law enforcement section of the ordinance. Governor, I can answer that in a minute. But no, we would have nothing. This council would have no jurisdiction over felony probation.
okay.
Just misdemeanor.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. That's helpful. My other question is, with regard to overseeing the immobilization of vehicles and vehicle boots, is that something that was started in misdemeanor probation? It seems to me that, with the study commission, that would fall under parking with cars and everything. I'm kind of confused as to why it's under misdemeanor probation. Can you enlighten us as to why that's
You know,
job
I
duties?
don't know. I don't know why that was given to probation. My best guess would be the safety aspect of it. A lot of people aren't happy when you do that.
Okay.
We're qualified, we're trained, we have weapons, we have defensive tactics training, so I guess we deal with more volatile situations than probably parking. That would be my best guess, though.
Okay. Sorry.
Commissioner Perdue, and they deal specifically with individuals that have been ticketed and found guilty within the system. So no repetitive, no insurance tickets, habitual traffic offenders, individuals of that nature who get a boot on their car because we know they cannot have a driver's license at the moment or cannot obtain insurance. So they're putting a boot on those vehicles. Whereas if we're dealing specifically with vehicles that are being booted because of parking, they've violated one of the parking laws under that department's supervision. So when Rachel goes and puts a boot on someone's car, it's because they've been convicted, of a third or fourth no insurance offense. So it's until they can come back and prove that they've got, correct me if I'm wrong, is it R22 insurance?
Most times.
Yeah.
SR22, yeah.
Yeah, until they have the basically state required insurance and their driver's license has been reinstated, you don't get to drive your vehicle because that's what most people do. They're like, oh, I don't care that I got charged with driving while suspended or no insurance. I still have to go to work. I'm still going to drive my car. Where driving without insurance, it affects everybody. When you're in a wreck, you got no insurance, the other party could be hurt, X, Y, and Z. That's why they boot those types of vehicles.
Thank you for that, because, that was kind of glaring to me, but that makes total sense, so thank you.
Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Mike and Rachel. Is it mutually agreed upon between you guys and City Court to maybe be your own entity? Have you
Yes.
guys had that conversation? Okay.
Yeah. The judge is the one that has brought it up and presented it.
Okay.
so.
And then a follow-up to that, Madam Chair. Is something simple as the second bucket that we keep referring to of just creating an ordinance or getting rid of an ordinance to potentially help you guys out later on instead of just the study commission charter review?
Yeah, thank you for
think.
that question. That was going to be my form and function question to the county attorney as well. It doesn't look like the charter speaks to anything about probation, and it makes sense. This is 2010 when you were formed, so would it be a recommendation to council to change ordinance, or would you recommend that we look at charter language? Mr. Enruth?
It appears to me that it's an ordinance, section 2.18.010. So I don't believe they're not part of the charter. This would be more of an ordinance issue for us.
Ms. Casey?
Madam Chair, the charter does have within it the ability for the executive branch to create whatever departments they deem necessary. So I kind of agree with Mr. Silk that it would probably go in the second bucket as a recommendation because, one, the ordinance would need to be changed, and the budget, but those seem fairly simple to get done as far as moving it out and into its own budget.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, and thank you, Lori and Chad. Was my thought. Maybe it's a supplemental report. The Council of Commissioners that say, during our deliberations, we found that there isn't an independent county probation office, and we think because of the nature of that, we should start creating one and change that ordinance.
And just for the council's knowledge, under the ordinance, it doesn't specifically state what department they're in. It just says that there was an office of misdemeanor probation that shall be created, which shall do all of the things they said they're doing. It doesn't specifically state why they're under city court. So this may actually just be a budgetary issue.
All right, excellent. Any other follow-up questions? All right, thank you very much, and we again appreciate you rescheduling with us and appreciate the information. So thank
Not
you
a
for
problem.
coming
Thank
up
you.
again tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, moving on to correspondence and our study commission update. I do have 2 pieces of correspondence from email, and so I'll read those into the record as soon as I get my way back to them. Mr. Banderob had sent us on, let's see, let me go to this first one here. Both of them, he's got them dated for tonight, for July 28th, but his first one is regarding a citizen's view of comments by the commissioners at your last meeting, and this is July 28th. When we have a CEO that can refuse to write a simple letter when requested to do so unanimously by the Council of Commissioners, and we have a Council of Commissioners that can refuse to implement a specified BSB charter duty for 20 years, it is time for change. Most significant takeaways from Commissioner Morgan. Both forms of government have problems. You need to think outside the box. I see some normally and depends on local ordinance in the Montana Code. Takeaways from Commissioner Callahan. We have one vote, which translates into taxation without representation. Somehow we have to get a balance. The mine is located in the county, thus a larger significant portion of the Butte-Silver tax revenue comes from the county. More accountability is needed. More opinions lead to better decisions. Full-time, you'd have to give them more to do, more stipulated duties and responsibilities. From Commissioner Anderson, too many mays and not enough shalls, but I must respectfully disagree with his ideas relative to at-large representation and designation of districts. Relative to redrawing the districts, there are certain legal restraints that you must take into consideration. You can only terminate an elected official by recall vote, which is a complicated procedure. So as the city county attorney suggested, 6 districts and work into an alternating 3 and 3 election cycle to keep consistency. You must think in terms of a transition period, possibly terminating the position of the 6 commissioners up for re-election next voting cycle, then the 3 odd-numbered districts to be elected for a 2-year term, re-elected for a 4-year term, and on the next voting cycle, the 3 even-numbered districts to be elected for the normal 4 years. As to the at-large representation, that is why you need to elect an at-large Council of Commissions chair and call him or her a Council of Commissioners chair so he or she can continue to be the representative of the people and of the city and county. Relative to neighborhood community improvement councils and a greater Butte Community Council, they have to be more than just an opportunity to help the commissioner stay connected to the citizens' concerns and ideas. They have to be a citizen group that have the authority to bring official consensual recommendations before our local government. Respectfully submitted for your consideration and action, R. Edward Banderob. His second is some information for public outreach and some suggestions, and the subject is interactive listening sessions. A couple of suggestions for Shanna to consider that the Greeley did if she has not already thought of them. The volunteer fire department halls used to be the neighborhood community centers, and some are still used for neighborhood community gatherings. There are people who are not on social media, do not listen to the radio, nor read the newspapers. We, the GNCDC Inc., had good results notifying them by getting a dozen 24 by 18 used campaign signs, putting a see-through plastic sleeve on them, then having an overlay printed for each meeting, slipping it into the sleeve and posting them as a major intersection, at major intersections, stop signs in the neighborhood a week or 2 before each meeting. I am sure if you decide to hold your listening sessions at the volunteer fire department halls, the volunteer firefighters would be willing to put up and take down the signs for you. Also, I heard a faint comment by one of you that if you would like to do more of a listen and discuss interactive sessions, these sessions would be a great opportunity to demonstrate how the people and their local government could work together to draw the will of the people together into a consensual recommendation for the common good. At interactive listening and discussion format would be demonstrating how another level of government might function. The level of government responsible for coalescing or drawing together the will of the people into a consensual recommendation. This format would also help clarify and educate the public to the fact that the elected representatives would still be the ones who make the final decisions while giving the people an opportunity to more than just express an opinion and thus feel a sense of participation. Respectfully submitted for your consideration and action, R. Edward Banderob. P.S. If you want the people to attend your sessions, we found the best time is about 7 p.m. So those will be noted and placed on file in our notes from Kim, and then you also have it in email if you'd like to review those at your leisure. I think there are some great suggestions regarding the public outreach there. So we will make sure to let Mr. Banderab know we have gotten his communications and they've been placed on file. All right, so moving on to unfinished business, our public outreach discussion, the op-ed update. Mr. Seppen had those moving along, and so I'm assuming they have moved forward. He can probably get back to us in terms of what's been done regarding those. I'm not sure if he's met with Shanna or not. And then Party Line, he said that he cannot make it on July 30th, so Dan is looking for a fellow commissioner to attend Party Line on Wednesday. This coming Wednesday. I can come with you, and I think Mr. Silk said he could. We could probably coordinate on that. So, yeah, we'll get you covered, Dan. Okay. All right. Shanna, would you like to come forward, please, to visit with us about the calendar and our meetings and the outreach materials that you presented us?
Good evening. Thanks, Madam Chair. So I sent an email to all commissioner members. Just want to make sure everybody received the materials. So I'll start with the flyer. Everyone should have got something that looks like this, which is a draft of a flyer that will turn into a trifold brochure handout. As you can see from my version, I have a bunch of markups on here ready to go, but I did send that out to everyone to see if there were any additional comments. Some of the things that will be changed are just kind of the readability, increasing the text size. I won't say that's because of my age, but I know it's a little bit hard to read. The boldness of the text. I did receive comments that Party Line's been changed to the last Wednesday of the month, so that will be changed. I received a comment from Ms. McCormick to add under topics to be discussed something about the rural fire and career fire departments. And then from Madam Chair to add just, any other issues related to structure and form of government, just to kind of keep that open so people know this is not all that you're looking at. And again, mostly just kind of increasing the text size. So were there any other comments on the flyer?
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for doing this, Shauna. Appreciate it. I was just, when I printed this out, I was just a little confused with this graphic. I think it's confusing. I'm not sure what we're trying to say with that. So if you could let me help us on that, because I don't know if there's anything different that we could use that brings people in. I mean, I printed it out and I looked at it, I'm like,
So we do have kind of some nice photos of the courthouse that we could replace that with, just to kind of give an image of local government, if you think that would be better.
Thank you. Yeah, I just thought all those directions, I just don't want people to be turned off by, what are we doing here? What does that even mean?
Sure.
When we just want to, get input from folks. So thank you. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that or not, but I just thought I'd toss that out there.
Ms. McCormick?
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify that it should be the relationship between the paid fire department and the volunteer fire departments, not career and rural.
Okay, so, I guess if you could suggest some wording, rural fire departments and paid fire department, rural volunteer fire departments.
Just say volunteer, not rural.
Okay.
Mr. Dennehy?
I guess that question about the volunteer fire department, it's on. Yeah. I know it really, there you go. Is that should be topics to be discussed as another bullet item there of the relationship between the paid fire department and the volunteer fire department? Is that where that would go, I guess, Mary? Or Shanna, one of the two?
Madam Chair, if I can answer that. I made that in response, mostly to the community survey. I thought that should be included as a topic of discussion. We have the city county manager, the reducing the size of the districts, and the what is appropriate relationship between the paid and the volunteers, I think is a really critical issue that, certainly we can't solve, but so we need to address. And I think Shannon picked up on that. And, if we're going to add it into the survey, it should be added into the flyer.
I don't know who was first. Mr. Silk?
I was just going to say, instead of relationship, if we could say structure, because we're structuring the charter and everything else, because relationships, I don't want people to go backwards and think about, with what happened with House Bill 547 and all of that. Instead, just say, we're dealing with structure. And that might be a better term than relationship. I don't know if you were going to say the same thing, Chad.
I was going to say the exact same thing on the structure, because the structure is what determines the relationship of what we have going on in the community right now. And the structure has failed us for, decades and decades. The structure is what's going to set the department up for success. And that, getting input from the community on what they want to see their fire and emergency services, how they want it to be set up, I think is very important. And I know what we're going to get a lot of is the public's going to say, we want just the best emergency services we can get, and that's what it should be. So just to start that conversation with the structure of the emergency services, because there's probably a lot of people who don't even understand the structure of fire services at Butte-Silver. So structures where that's exactly what I was going to say.
I think this is an excellent segue if we're adding that to the flyer to kind of discussing the form of the open houses. Is that the word that we want to use, is open houses instead of public listening sessions? I think there was some feedback to Shanna about the language we're using for those meetings. And then talking about the topics that we would be bringing out for those, if you'd like to go into that piece.
Sure. Okay, just to kind of wrap that up, were there any other comments on the flyer before we get that finalized? If the table can't be readable, and I think it's just tough right now, I may take that out. I think it'll become a part of these open houses and part of those materials, but it might come off of here, so. Okay.
Mr. Dennehy?
Shannon, when you say the table, are you talking about other cities'
comparisons? I think it's, it's good information, and I think we're going to want to use it in our public meetings. But we want this flyer really to serve the purpose of, this is what we're doing, and this is where you contact us. It also has a timeline and a few other things, but really just that. So I think if anything needs to go, it'll be the table. Yep.
Any other comments on the flyer before we move forward? Ms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm thinking you were talking to me. Okay. I would just recommend if you were to take out that table, and I think that's a great idea, just because I think it could be just an ancillary information when people get more information. But I like this little thing that says, what is a charter? And I think making that bigger and like the size of what's on the left-hand side of page 2, just to let people can zero right in on that, because I think that's just a basic question that a lot of people probably don't even know what our charter is. And so that's great to have that in there, but bigger.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so we can move on to the public open houses. So today it would be really good if we can pick the dates and locations for those, and then we can start getting advertising out and meeting materials and flyers and set the location and all of those kind of things. So that's the most important thing. But yeah, we talked a little bit about the format of those public open houses. And I think that the idea to change the language to an open house from a listening session is just that people might think they're going just to listen, and actually you're going to listen. So anyway, public open house is kind of what we landed on. But I think the format that we're thinking of right now would be an open house, so people could show up, you know, anytime. You may give them a 2-hour window, say 5:30 to 7:30 or whatever we decide. They can show up kind of at any time, and there'll be stations set up. We've kind of talked about 5 stations, so there'll be sort of a start here, where they'll get an overview of what the commission is, what you're doing, what they're doing here. So each of these stations would be manned by at least one member of the commission. The other stations could be form and structure of government, fire, let's see, the commission itself, kind of number of commissioners, commission's function, full-time, part-time, those types of things. And then, excuse me, and then a station where it's other topics, miscellaneous. What else do people want to talk about? Just kind of open conversation. So then they could go from station to station, get what they need, give what they need, and leave as they choose. We had talked about, you know, of course, doing some kind of food and drink, and then some type of giveaway. So we talked about maybe like $50 gift cards to Murdoch's or something like that, just to kind of entice people to come, make it a little bit more fun. And we can do those kind of periodically throughout the meeting and just have a drawing. We'll also be getting folks' information to be able to send emails and future contact and that type of thing.
Ms. Adams, you said kind of the stations you envisioned was format and structure, discussion of the fire department department structures, commissioners, council of commissioners structure and number, and then city manager, CEO structure, was that right? And then an open one?
Yeah, so these are, you know, these were just kind of brainstorming. But yeah, so start here, overview of the process. Form and structure of government. The commission, just one focus on commission, and then fire, and then other topics. So I think that this is definitely open for discussion.
I'll start with you, Ms. Casey, and then I'll go to Mr. Dennehy.
I think we should have where the start here is, but then under form and structure of government, I think we have a couple stations maybe. One with what our current form and structure is, because I think some people don't really even understand that. And then maybe go to the number of council of commissioners, full-time, part-time, and then to the city county manager segment. I think those to me are all under the form and structure of government umbrella, but maybe we start out with what currently we have, and then what it could change to. That would be my suggestion.
Mr. Dennehy?
Another suggestion is transparency of government, participation of government. And what I'm trying to get at is the neighborhood council sort of question that has been brought up several times, well, brought up particularly by one or several members of the Greeley Council. But I think it's really important to have that discussion. If we are going to have neighborhood councils, are you going to participate in those councils? I mean, I know Mr. Banderob does a great job and has hustled and got people really excited about being a participant in government, but that doesn't mean that the other neighborhoods are going to be as equally as enthusiastic as Mr. Banderab's group. So I think that just under the guise of participation and transparency, how do you make the government more transparent might be a good station, I guess.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also think because we're talking about the structure of government with the charter, I would think there also should be a table or a consideration with regard to the second bucket of things that we're trying to gather from the community, which are recommendations for the council. I mean, I've gotten several texts from folks that are now getting, interested in the study commission, and I had a lady text me several recommendations, and I had to tell her that these are probably a great thing for our recommendations bucket that wouldn't necessarily be in the charter, but something that we really would like, and her comment was, just FYI, was her insistence that the Council of Commissioners agenda be more user-friendly with their wording and a lot of things that they have on the commission, read and acted upon, or even what is the committee of the whole, try and find different language that maybe, a work session, because some councils of commissioners in other counties, they have a committee of the whole meeting, but they call it a work session. So people are understood that it's just to get through the meat of an issue, and then the next time they meet, like in a regular meeting, they actually vote on things. So it was more, she said user-friendly, and I thought that was actually a great idea, but it would have to be in that recommendations bucket. But that might be a way to entice folks to come to these sessions with just ideas that might make the county government work more efficiently or easier for folks, less intimidating.
Madam Chair, I think under that guise, as Cindy has talked about it, is a supplemental reporting or recommendation to council. We have it at other issues, but maybe it should be more specified in other recommendations from those people who are involved coming to the listening sessions, and having recommendations so that we can tick those off as we continue deliberations of what's going to be on the ballot, what's going to change in the charter, and what supplemental reports that the study commission will be giving to the council commissioners and chief executive regarding our deliberations here. So that might be another fifth station, if you will. We're running out of commissioners, but adding to our stations, but that's okay. So that's great. Thanks, Cindy.
So I participated in several open houses that you have put on, and also that BLDC has put on, and I think the station that I'm having in mind that folks are talking about is, that interactive station where people go in and write their comments and either stick them on a sticky board or they just drop them in a comment box if they don't want them displayed publicly for other people to look at. But I think that could be almost unsupervised and just allowed to be an interactive with the public. Yeah. Okay. And I wanted to walk through what we would be talking about a bit, how we want to structure these sections. So if we're willing, if we can kind of maybe go through these particular sections and how we'd like to see those laid out. Ms. Adams had provided, I think, did you just email me that document?
I did, yeah. They're pretty rough drafts, but I'm happy to kind of go through what I have if you want me to do that.
That would be great.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with start here, general overview. First board, pretty basic. What is the Local Government Study Commission? Just pulled some bullet points off of the op-eds and the flyer. So the purpose of the commission is to examine the form of local government and review the city-county charter and provide recommendations to improve local government. And then from the op-ed, we may make recommendations in two ways and kind of go through that. So recommendations may be put to the public for a vote on the ballot, or by submitting recommendations to local government. Excuse me, this board would have the timeline, and then also, what is a charter? So again, just kind of the general overview. That one's pretty basic. Any comments on that?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Shauna, I think one thing we might want to do as a handout to have there is that red light, green light that was provided in the MSU stuff. I think that's kind of good if people want to take it and understand what we can and cannot look at, and then if they want to submit ideas later. I thought that was a good handout that they created with that. I don't know how anyone else feels, but if we wanted to have some copies of that at a station so they could just take it with them, or we can talk about.
Go ahead, Ms. McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Casey, I think that's a great idea, and, we just got to be clear that things that go to the ballot are changes to the charter. And I think one thing that is important to say is that, you'll be voting on what the current charter says versus what a proposed change is, and to clarify that.
And is that red light, green light document something somebody could email to me?
I can do that.
Okay. Okay, so station 2 would be then form and structure of government, the current. So going through that current form and structure of government, which I just, again, pulled some basic text and into bullet points. So these will be kind of large boards that sit on a table or on an easel. But just talking about the legislative branch, council of commissioners, how that's currently organized, the executive branch, chief executive and administrative departments, and then the judicial branch, city court and justice court. Let's see, and then just kind of talk about what the study commission is doing, looking at alternative forms of government. So that would be the second station.
In this station, is this where you would outline, I think you were showing me, I'm sorry that others don't have this to look at, but you were thinking on that board maybe might be the description of modifying executive branch with transition to a professional city manager, a possible consideration. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think with Ms. Casey's recommendation, so we might just kind of split those into two, right? So here's our current, here's what we have now, and so then maybe the third station would be form and structure of government. What could it change to? So that's where we talk about just kind of all the different ideas that have been floated, and that's where we could include, and we could do this as a handout, kind of the details of what other communities in Montana are doing. And then a little bit about sort of what we think pros and cons might be of each of these different changes to the form.
Any feedback on that suggestion?
Madam Chair, I think that's a great idea to separate those two, what a current form is and what we're proposing or what we're studying, because that's kind of the meat of this issue. So yeah, I think having that separate so people understands what could be deliberated on and what their opinions are of that is really important.
You guys keep raising your fingers at the same time. I'm going to go with Mr. Silk first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the different forms of government, are we going to talk about chief executive, mayor, manager, and number of commissioners, or do those two, are they worthy of their being separated as well? We're going to go start with the general overview of the current structure, and then are you thinking chief executive, mayor, manager, and changing the number of commissioners all in one section, or is that going to be two different sections?
I kind of think they would be separate ballot issues if they were to come forward, or both of them were to come forward. So almost it merits two separate boards. Right?
And
And I think
yeah,
it would
I
be
would
more
recommend
clear.
that too. There's a lot that goes into that. Yeah, to separate those as well.
Yeah,
so.
because it's possible that a voter would not like to do a city manager, but would want to reduce commissioners or vice versa. So I think two boards would probably be better there. Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if we want to, and I apologize because after this conversation with number 2 and 3, going back to number 1, just to let folks know in some way to say, these are things we're talking about, but that's not all of it. If folks have other ideas for a ballot issue or changes within the structure of the charter, to say, you know, that's the goal of the sessions and the public outreach, is to say, you know, nothing's off the table. And to say, just because we've zeroed in on a few that may be ballot issues down the road or possible changes, that, you know, no idea is a bad one. I mean, I just want folks to know that just because we've done several months of work and talking with all of the department heads and such, to say, you know, we really want to make sure that nothing's overlooked, and any ideas, you know, we're welcoming those, because I don't want them to feel that they're pigeonholed into just these kinds of conversations. I don't know how we do that. It's a kind of an overarching thing.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, thank you. I don't know how many of these listening sessions that we're going to have. I think we should have quite a few. However, anybody that makes a suggestion, we might wind up with some great ideas from some of these folks. And we won't know till we get there, but we have to have more than 2.
I think in our calendar, we had proposed 2 before the first formal public hearing, and I'm going to defer to you, Ms. Casey, because you helped us with that timeline, and I can't remember if the timeline was driven by MCA regulation or if it was internally created.
Madam Chair, on that part, it was just internally created, and I think we may want to have more listening or open houses before the public hearing, because the public hearing's going to be formal. They're going to come up, and there's not going to be any back and forth. They're going to come up with their ideas, they're going to get noted, and thank you for submitting your comment kind of thing, where the open houses will be more interaction. And so I think we're going to get folks to speak more at the open houses personally.
Mr. Dennehy, did you want to add to that? Okay. Just agreeing. Okay. So, so to that end, we had the calendar. If we might, I guess, let's finish the board's conversation, and then we'll go back to how many sessions we should do and when we would host our official public hearing, our formal public hearing. So let's finish these board's discussions. I think we had moved on to, we're going to have at least 2 more boards after the structure and function. There would be the proposed possible changes. Then there was an idea of, we want to hear your ideas, like anything that isn't here listed, the open kind of section, or the tabling that is done with just listening to different ideas for maybe both recommendations and both charter changes. And then we have the issue of fire, and I asked county attorneys specifically to come tonight to kind of help us structure that conversation, because I know that I want us to be very deliberate and very purposeful with what we can and cannot do in that conversation, like, you know, asking our public for their feedback. So I guess I just open the floor for conversation about that particular board, or station stop, is it? So, Mr. Silk?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I know that this is a huge topic, and I'm glad it's being talked about. I would like to be a part of that, but only if someone else can be at that station with me as well, just to make sure that the dialogue stays on track. And I guess I would ask the body to what their recommendations are, if they would want me to be there basically as an informant to what goes on currently, and then to make sure that everyone is clear of the non-bias while I'm at the study commission, during the study commission meeting. So I guess my question to the commission is, one, would you guys want me to be at that table? And if you would want me there, can we have someone else posted up there just to make sure we're continuing on? Or you just don't want me there at all on that table? So I just asked that question to you guys.
Ms. McCormick?
Thank you, Madam Chair, but with all due respect, I think you have a conflict of interest. And you have a real, I think asking the community what they would like to see, how their fire service is structured, could ultimately benefit the fire department. I don't know. Or it could ultimately, find a better way for the paid and the volunteer services to interact. So it's not like I am trying to promote that, it should be volunteer services, but you definitely have a bias, and you project that. So at the very least, somebody else has to be there who is knowledgeable of the volunteer services and can speak to that.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm having trouble trying to figure out why we need a fire board and a spot, because I don't want the general public, when they come to the listening sessions, to come in and say, well, why is fire so special that they have their own place in the lineup, that, it's, I don't want folks to get ahead of what we're doing to say, yeah, this needs to be changed or updated, which is great, but I'm just worried that there are other departments within Butte-Silver Road who say, wait a second, mine's just as important, and I'm not getting a board, and I'm not getting special attention. But to say also that it's very, very important for us to have that conversation, to get input about that structure of the fire department. And so I'm just kind of at a loss as to, should we do that? Because I don't want to I want to, as Chad said earlier, set us up for success, and I don't want it to be confrontational in any way, to just say, and of course we can't be without confrontation, but I want to make sure that we're not singling out one for the lack of another. And I know this is very important, and this is kind of top of mind for a lot of folks in the community, but I'm just kind of wrestling with that. I'd love to get some other thoughts.
Okay, so I'll start with Ms. McCormick, and then I'll go to you, Ms. Casey. So Ms. McCormick?
It's a top concern in the community. It's been a big issue, and as far as I can tell, it's not being moved forward since Gene Forte vetoed the bill. And I think it's something that really can't be ignored any longer. We need a really functioning, high-quality fire department that is comprised of paid and volunteers. We need to start tackling this. This body, we're not going to come up with a solution, because I think it is very, very complex. But what I think we have the opportunity, it is something that's in the charter. We have, ultimately, maybe we will come up with ideas about how we can change the charter. Of course, charter in respect to how do we change the state law. But if we want that state law ever to change, if people want one way or the other, we have to show the state what this community wants. We have to have, the last time it went up, I think it wasn't a community-wide call for changes. Now we have an opportunity for the community to address this issue and just start coming up with some ideas and maybe moving this forward. I certainly don't think the study commission is going to, figure it all out, and we may not even come up with anything to change the charter, but I think it would be derelict for us to ignore such an important issue in our community at this point.
Ms. Casey, and then I'll take you, Mr. Enruth.
I would agree with Mary. The fire section of the charter takes up a large portion of the charter. My thought on it, and as a board, is that there is some conflicting language or some language that isn't quite clear. I don't know that we're going to solve the problem, but we might be able to clear up some of the language in the charter to make it better. So my thought on a board is we maybe take some of those things that some say, well, it's Butte-Silver Bow ordinance or it's state law, you know, where we heard those sections. Maybe we take those sections and simply put them on a board and say, this is what's unclear in there and maybe causing some of the problem, not all of the problem, but that would be maybe my thought is we look at the language in the charter and the language that maybe, and maybe Mr. Enruth could help us, that isn't quite clearly written. Because I did get, from both the paid and the volunteers that came before us, I got some of that information out of what they submitted, is that maybe the charter language isn't quite clear. And maybe that's starting, maybe we can clear that up and start shifting to resolve this. That would be my thought. But I think the others, I know there's other departments that want to be in, some off, some that don't want to be taken out. And I know this board knows my feeling that the more general, but the fire is several pages in the charter, so I agree with Mary. I think in some form we have to address it, but maybe it's just simply trying to look at the language that's causing conflict. I'm not sure.
Mr. Enruth?
If the committee so chooses to do so and have a fire board, I think it's absolutely relevant to have two individuals sitting there that know everything about those two departments. Mr. Silk is one of them. I don't know if anybody on the commission is truly up to date on the volunteer stuff, but maybe looking into someone that knows all of those things, because exactly what was just stated is there's not necessarily confusion in the language between the charter and the state law. It is simply when the previous charter was created, it didn't comport with state law. It specifically, our charter was supposed to state in the charter that the Director of Fire Services was to have all this authority. It did not do that. It stated there will be an ordinance, and then the Director of Fire Services, you know, that all came underneath it. Where state law specifically states it has to be in the charter, which is why it is as big as it is because the state law mandates it to be as big as it is. You have to specifically state in the charter what you want to happen with the volunteer fire departments and the career fire departments and how they're going to function. State law mandated that as being part of the charter. So that's where the commission has the authority to do that, is cleaning up the charter language. If you do nothing with it now, the charter simply holds no water over the volunteer fire departments because they were not dissolved unless they were done so and taken care of in the charter. But the reason I'm saying you need two individuals there that know all of these things is because there are a lot of consequences to choosing one way or the other. If you currently stick with the form that we have now, the Director of Fire Services has no budgetary authority over the volunteers, which means that the volunteers should have control over their own budgets, which means that the career firefighters will no longer be working in those districts because they won't be budgeted for it. Then you have volunteers within inside of a city and no career guys there. There are consequences to all of these, so it has to be melded in a very thoughtful and thorough manner, but it has to be in the charter. Like, the charter is what has to do that, and that's the state law. You know, if the city of Butte-Silver Bow wishes to keep its volunteers where they're at, that's fantastic because they're located throughout the entire city, but they're asking to have budgetary authority back and all of their authority back, which is fine, but then you lose the career guys in those districts because they're no longer budgeted for it, they're no longer there. And that shortens up a career department. There are a lot more complications and issues than just creating a structure where there's one person in charge and everybody, down the line falls in place. The way this has developed over the past 30 years has created basically a financial and budget situation that could possibly cause a real issue with those fire departments. So that's why I'm saying if you're going to have that table, you need 2 or 3 people there that truly understand and know how all of these department works, which possibly one of our chief volunteer firefighter guys could help us out because they know all that stuff and how they work together. And maybe someone else besides Chad or Chad himself at the table too, to help with those types of questions. That's just my thoughts.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, thank you. This kind of for Matt here. I'm still an advocate for a separate director of fire services. I think things ran a lot smoother then. And nothing to throw stones at Zach or anything, but he's wearing 3 different hats. I think he's got a lot on his plate. And I think by having one person, that would help a lot. But it's still pretty convoluted even with that, wouldn't you think?
Commissioner Thielen, yes, again though, the charter has to provide for that. So that's what everybody needs to be aware of, is the language in the charter needs to be curtailed to what the people of Butte are wanting with regards to their fire departments. If they want it to stay the same, we don't need to change the charter language, we need to clean up our ordinance language. If they would prefer one department with a director of fire services and then 2, forgive me Chad, I'm going to slaughter my positions, but chiefs underneath them, and then captains, and then everybody else, separately, a volunteer chief and a paid chief. That's what you need to do in the charters. You need to specifically state the charter is going to control this way, and this is what we want it, this is how we want it to work, and then you develop the ordinances underneath that. Or we want the volunteer fire department districts dissolved, and we want this as our fire services, which has to be done in the charter. That's what state law requires. So that's why the House Bill 547 was requested, because it got rid of the state mandate and it just allowed counties to go back to it. But as Governor Gianforte's veto stated, it's a local problem, which then put it on your guys' plate and then the citizens of our county's plate to determine that. So like I said, if you want to have a board, I definitely think you need extremely qualified people to be sitting there to have those conversations. Now, on a side note, it's politics, it's very political. People are going to say what they say, so they also better have tough skin.
Ms. McCormick, I think you had your hand up first, and I'll go over here.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was just wondering how the 1979 state law fits into this, because it says that the volunteers that the fire department chief has no authority over the volunteers. Is that law still in effect? Isn't that what Bill 547 was trying to kind of negate?
House Bill 547 was trying to remove specific sections of the statute that required the counties to deal with this matter in their charters rather than through ordinances. That's what it was trying to remove in the state law, to return it back to simply a local level, is what that was trying to do.
So would that have repealed this 1979 state law?
It would repeal the current one that's in place. It would have.
So right now, that 1979 state law is still in place?
I can't remember if it's the 79 or the 91.
It is the 1979.
It's whenever the charter, it was after our charter was involved.
The charter was in 1977 and the state law was 1979.
Which is fine, and like I said, if the citizens of Butte-Silver Bow want to keep the volunteer districts within the city, everybody needs to understand that that budgetary authority goes back to the volunteers, or possibly goes back to the volunteers, and then the career firefighters no longer respond to those districts. That's a complicated issue and topic, and that's why I'm saying everybody needs to understand the consequences to the requests and actions that are being requested. Butte's very, very unique. All of our volunteers, outside of a couple of them, are within the city limits. And so I definitely think, something along the lines of what Commissioner Thieland requested, keeping everybody intact and working through it with different directors based on how Butte has now developed with all of this is a viable idea. Going the other way and creating one career department and keeping the volunteers in place, with one director over the top of them could make things complicated. But again, separating everybody, I think, has more issues than people understand, and they need to understand what those issues are.
Mr. Thielen?
Madam Chair, thank you. So Matt, you just said something kind of piqued my interest. So one thing, we're going to back up a little bit. Some of this is charter language, because if I remember right, it was like 1997 that they were going to make the chief the director of fire services or something. I think it was back then, I'm not certain. But then you just said something that to make it a whole city department, if we did that to keep the volunteers in place, if that were to happen and they could pass the physical fitness and all that stuff, the volunteers would then be hired first as a city employee?
I have no answer to that question. I don't know how that works. And I would say no. We have required processes for following and hiring individuals, and I believe that would violate some Title IX, sections and other things like that without diving too deep into it.
Ms. Dolan?
Sorry, thank you. Just a couple of things. I think, number one, I think having a couple folks with the fire board is great, but I think that just to take, Chad, the weight off you for any folks wanting to have autonomy with the study commission, I don't want to have folks think that you're swaying our opinion as other commissioners with your ties to the fire, even though you know so much about this issue. But I think the idea of having, someone from paid and someone from volunteer, if they're willing to come to our listening sessions and, staff that board as experts, because you guys really know what to talk about and all of that. But my bigger question is, we have asked wanting to have Anaconda Deer Lodge come to a study commission meeting about the possibility or just more information with regard to how Anaconda Deer Lodge is the only other consolidated government in Montana with regard to the autonomy of a fire department. They're actually taken out of the charter and they run independent of the charter. So I think we should learn about that before we have a listening session, because that might be another alternative idea. If it could work for Butte-Silver Bow. I just don't know enough about it to make any assessment, but the fact that I've been hearing from folks in Anaconda Deer Lodge County, that works really well. Having that autonomy outside of a charter, run on their own. So County Attorney Enruth, can you speak to that? And is that a possibility? I don't even know what their scheduling is, but to have that opportunity to learn from the folks in Anaconda with regard to taking it out of a charter and having it independent.
I definitely think that that's something that the commission should listen to, but and for very good reasons. When you look at Anaconda geographically and how that works, those outside fire districts, if you looked at the city of Anaconda and thought, okay, like, this is the city, these are the outside limits. It's why it works. Their city has their city fire department, and then they have their outside departments as they stretch out to Georgetown and those other outside communities. That's where Butte-Silver Bow County has become very unique. Most of our volunteer fire departments are inside our city limits. We do have our rural departments, Melrose and Rocker and those, so that's where when you start looking at that, is Butte has grown, and it's grown past its a lot of the volunteer districts. Boulevard is technically within the city limits right now, and Home Atherton and all of those ones. And so that's where having that understanding of okay, we want to pull it out and separate them. Well, now you're separating the Boulevard Fire Department, which is technically the district I would be in, and no longer having the career firefighters, able to come to my home if we separate that out. I think you really have to talk with all of the people in those districts to determine whether or not they want to rely on one or the other, which is why I definitely think having them both actually makes more sense based off of what happened. You just need to, this body has the ability to create a clearer command structure, which I think is what it needs to look at from a legal standpoint. But yeah, that's why Anaconda works, is they have their city fire departments, and then as they stretch out towards Georgetown or out towards Opportunity, they're outside city limits, what you would consider city limits, even though technically there's no line. And then they have their own independent bodies and their independent authorities and things like that. And that's what state law was meant to do, was to make sure that when cities consolidated, they didn't just get rid of those outside fire districts and no longer had people out there to help. They allowed them to have their own taxing authority, to have their own budgetary authority, but they're independent of the local government there in Anaconda. But again, a lot of that has to deal with how they're structured, and Butte is simply structured the same and differently. We still have our rules, but we have a lot of them with inside city limits, if that makes any sense. But I definitely think having them come over and talk would be extremely beneficial, and I can call my counterpart over there, Morgan Smith, and a few other individuals that I remain in contact with, Chief Executive Everett and them. I'm sure they'd be happy to come over and discuss it with us.
That would be
Yeah.
helpful. Mr. Dennehy? Cindy was first. Oh, that's, I'm like, Cindy's getting out of her chair. I'm not sure. I thought she was the last question. Lori, if you want to take the next one.
I just had a question, Matt, when you said that if they were to go separate and independent, like Boulevard would respond within their district, and we wouldn't necessarily have the paid that would respond, doesn't that affect the insurance fire rate that we all pay if we don't have city firemen responding?
I can't directly answer the question because I don't know how it would affect it. But I mean, that's where I've really looked at this and thought about it is the volunteers are extremely important in that sense. They do help with insurance, and then you have the overlap coverage from whichever way you want to look at the overlap, whether it's volunteers overlapping career or career overlapping volunteers. I'm definitely going to say from a legal standpoint, it's going to help. It's going to affect insurance one way or another. To the effect of which way, I do not know. Particularly because there's a lot of new laws in place. I know this because I recently built a home up on Silver Bow. I believe it was 2015. A lot of it had to do with Big Sky and things like that. But under new state subdivision laws, a lot of homes now that are being built have fire suppression systems in them. Or I went with a pond because I wanted fish. You have to have that kind of local water around your house in order for volunteers or career firemen to be able to react. So there are some other state laws that have been put in place that have helped lower insurance costs and things like that with regards to fire suppression and firefighting and response times. Because if you're at Big Sky and they had a smaller firefighter department up there, they started making those homes put those types of systems in. So with regards to insurance, I'm sure it would have an effect one way or another. The actual effect I can't, I can't talk to because I have not researched it enough.
Mr. Dennehy?
On the record, sorry, Laurie. I think there's a number of issues that we need to maybe separate and make decisions. First of all, I think that Chad being at the table is a conflict. I think he has listened several months of the organization of this department, and to put him at the table because he's very knowledgeable. But that puts him at a risk, at a conflict of all of the information and all the decisions we have to make here. So I would suggest that we would not put Chad at that table, but bring two individuals, one from the paid department, one from the volunteers, to sit at the table. Now, sitting at the table and having arguments at the table are two different things. I think that could be very interesting when you're going to the table and asking certain people how they feel. It's a political issue. To say it's not a political issue, is going through life with blinders on. So that has to be very clearly suggested to the people who are giving information, both on the volunteer fire departments and on the paid, that you're here to give information, accurate information. And so that's one of the challenge. I think another decision, listen, we're going to make decisions in terms of the charter language. And we're going to make the decisions based on what the public has to say. And I think it's very important on open houses that they have the ability to make those comments. But we're going to have the ability to change the charter in ways that we're going to have to debate. Are we going to debate that and these are hypotheticals, okay? Are we going to debate that the Director of Fire Services is the person in charge of both the paid and volunteer, and that person, he or she, will be making decisions for the volunteer fire departments on how their budget's going to run? That's one issue. Another issue is that could be a debatable item is what Ben has said. Is there going to be an ombudsman that is going to be the Director of Fire Services or the fire coordinator, as I recall? Because I remember my friend Dick Trethaway was a fire coordinator for a number of years, and he was the kind of the springboard of having volunteers come to talk to him about what they thought it was important. Or so was J.R. Richardson at one time, was a fire coordinator. So is the fire coordinator a in-between bridge between what we're talking about here? Or, as Matt has said, are we just going to say, hey, all right, we're going to have a city fire department, and the Director of Fire Services is the director of the city fire department, and all the chiefs and battalion chiefs and captains, that's under his or her bailiwicks. But the volunteer, they're going to have their own deal. Now, that's the decision we're going to have to come down to, to be, coming to the brass tacks of this if we're going to change the charter. We're going to have that decision. We're going to have that debate. We're going to have to, at the end of the day, make that language very clear in the charter and move forward. But we should move forward on a educational basis on what the folks of this community want. And I'm sure that when we do that, we'll have a number of other issues that will come up, not only including the fire department, but anything else we're discussing. But I think that's really important. So we're going to have to make a decision on what the changes of that charter is going to be, and the language is going to be whatever the debate will come out to, and whatever the vote is going to come out to in changing that charter. And we're going to make that decision. And I think the Anaconda Deer Lodge idea of having those folks come in and talk to us is a great one. But I don't think we should stop the open houses. We should include them as part of our discussion, continue on with the open houses and have that discussion and have them brought in when we can, schedule those folks to be part of our decision-making process. So that's how, from the world according to Dan Dennehy, that's how I look at it. And a lot of people don't like the way I vision stuff, so I get it. But there's a number of issues, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to make a decision. And that's a tough decision. And we can punt that decision too and say, look, there's a study done by a consulting group that the council has. We would make a supplemental decision, supplemental report saying, will you look at that and make the decision and give it to the council? Now, those are a number of options that we have, and we need to get to the question of what we're going to do. But we can't get to it tonight because we need that open house to help us on our way in our decision. So, for what it's worth, that's my 2 cents.
I have a comment, Mr. Thielen, if I may, and then I'll defer to you. Yeah, I get to talk too, so if that's okay. I'm thinking in structure and function. Thank you, Dan, for your synopsis of, I see 4 decisions there. The 4th decision being we do nothing. We say, council, you take care of it. But I think to scope and scale what we need to present to people at these meetings is to just ask these kind of questions that you just laid out. Like, do you like how things run right now? Are you comfortable with how it's running? Would you like to see a structural change where we have perhaps an independent fire services director, or keep it the same as it is currently? Would you like to see the volunteer departments be as one umbrella or separated as they were in the past? Some sort of questions that can guide that discussion. And then to Mr. Enruth's point, I think, because what I'm trying to avoid is if we leave it super open, we're not going to get anything of value. We'll get a lot of rhetoric and discussion, and if people know about the issue, they might say, oh yeah, well, so-and-so hates so-and-so, and that's why that happened, and all the rumor mill stuff. So we want to have substance in that conversation. So I'm trying to put some sideboards on directing it. And to Mr. Enruth's comment about qualified people at the table, I would be open to hearing who those people might be that we would want to reach out to. So Mr. Thielen.
So in regards to your last comment there, I sitting listening to everybody and listening to Dan, my thought would be, and maybe a recommendation, is to get people that don't have a dog in the fight that are up here at the top of the heap. Let's get some of these guys that are on the streets that are just laymen, the firefighters. We want to talk to them, get their opinion, and see what they think. That way it's not being convoluted by chiefs, battalion chiefs, and so on. So that's my recommendation.
Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it would be advantageous, and I would like Shauna's opinion on this too, to have qualified people at a fire board and have those conversations. But to Dan's point about it could get political and kind of confrontational, we don't want that. We want people's input. So I'm wondering if it would be advantageous to have the folks at the board, but also maybe have them, each of the paid folks and the volunteer folks, if they could come up with, and with our approval as a study commission, a leaflet that has the talking points of the major issues, or I guess talking points is probably the best term, bullets of what the volunteers are looking for, what the paid are looking for, and trying to come up with something concrete. But it might be an easier way to say, and you could take it home and look at all of the different points on it. What do you think about that? Would that be helpful or more of a hindrance?
I think somehow we have to simplify this topic so that it can be easily communicated to somebody who has no background in it, and discussed in a 10, 15, 20-minute period. And I think that's going to be a challenge. So, I'm taking some notes here, but the commission is really going to have to kind of help flesh out these issues in a way that's easy for people to understand. So I think a handout is a great idea. If we can pull something like that together before these meetings, I think that would be wonderful. I think that's a really good goal. And then as far as who should, man the station, I think it can be, lay people, as you say. It doesn't have to be firefighters, but it has to be somebody who kind of understands at least what you're trying to communicate to people. So.
Mr. Silk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to be able to get everything out after that half-hour discussion. And I think it just proves that it is such a complicated issue, as Ms. McCormick stated, that it needs to be figured out. The structure of any government or any department, especially in emergency services, directly impacts the public safety and the firefighter safety in this situation. If there was a planning issue, I would want Lori there. If there was a Department of Emergency Services issue, I would want Dan there. I think sometimes even just what we are doing here is creating division amongst the career and volunteers within this discussion that we just had about career doing this and the volunteers doing this. We're already playing that game in this meeting. if we just go there and the intent is to have an open house and a listening session, why can't we just listen? And if someone has a question related to the fire department, I'll answer it to the best of my ability. Now, if you guys don't want me there, that's fine. But what's going to happen is if you don't understand the question that's being asked to you, we just saw it in this meeting, we're referring to Enruth, County Attorney Enruth. And some of those questions that were referred to him, I can answer to you. In fact, not opinion. That's something that needs to be clarified, is that not everything I say about the fire department is an opinion. Some of it is fact. And those facts need to be brought to the public. So I guess my frustration is we think the sky is falling. We think people are going to go there and get in arguments. Why don't we just go there and listen first and then see what the community wants? I think it's not a bad idea to have a couple topics up for discussion so we don't get into this bantering as we just did of career versus volunteer. What about just the fire service? How we want the fire service to look? And I understand that it's contentious. But there should be a body, there should be people within this community that are setting the precedent of getting rid of that separation and focusing on a department that serves the community. And I think we should be the first ones to do that. In my opinion, we need to stop worrying about what's going to happen and just let the public speak to us and answer questions if we can. I would, if I was going to a listening session and Miss Casey was not at a planning board, what we're calling these, I would go over to Lori and ask her, because I would want my question answered. I also think that having someone there at the board with me, whether you guys want it or not, that was me just checking myself through you all, is by making sure that a conversation is going to stay on track and that as a fellow commissioner, we stand by each other and say, no, Chad wasn't going off. Chad was just stating the facts. So I guess I'm kind of at a loss here. I know we talked about Anaconda coming over and how, you know, that's a great idea. And Mr. Enruth explained it great. We have a situation like that with Melrose. They are a true rural fire department. They are not within the city limits. And like I said before, I do not want to get rid of the volunteers. The volunteers cannot run the fire department successfully in Butte-Silver Bow without the career. The career cannot successfully run a fire department without the volunteers. This is a complicated issue. I think some guidance on what the public can bring up, some talking points along with whatever else they want to talk about. But I think we just need to realize that we just need to have a conversation. And I appreciate commissioners who don't want to put me in that position. This position directly affects public safety, and that's what I do. And every one of us wants the public to be safer. I guess I would just end it with this, that let's not make this so complicated. Let's get people at that board that truly know what is going on in our community, and maybe someone else who doesn't know what's going on to have the checks and balances. But we were voted as a study commission to do these listening sessions. I believe that we are all good enough to be able to do a proper listening session or open house with just us. And I guess I would leave it at that. Thank you.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let me respond to that, because while I understand that, you know, you want to add on and be at that fire board and talk facts. Unfortunately, because of your role with HB 547 and the fact that you went up and testified and all of that, the perception, and as we all know, perception is reality. People take their perceptions and they think it's true to form, and it may not be. And I appreciate all your hard work and your knowledge base, but the fact of the matter remains that you're a study commissioner, but you're getting in your reference to Lori and Dan, Planning Department and DES, they're both retired. They don't have a vested interest, and you do because you're paid by Butte-Silver Bow. You work under the fire chief, and I would just say that perception is to your detriment, unfortunately. It's like me trying to testify if we were dealing with federal government, and with my role in my job, I would recuse myself because, I mean, that's why I recused myself and left the Council of Commissioners. I technically did not have to because it wasn't in the charter that said, you know, because I have a certain job, but I felt it was important that the residents of District 1 would realize and understand that I was working for them. With my role in the federal government, there would be some gray. Is she talking for her boss in the federal government, or is she working on behalf of the constituency? And I feel that's kind of the same thing with you, Chad, with your job in Butte-Silver Bow's fire department. And we understand that you give us a lot of facts, and it's great information. And I would hope that folks would want to seek you out and ask you your fact-based information and opinion-based. But the fact of the matter is we have to get someone separate who can do that without any, to be unencumbered by your role in the study commission. So I would say that, you know, to get someone outside of that would be conducive to getting those conversations going and understood. But yeah, I just think that it's just too close and too much, and I do rely on Dan and Lori's and even Mary's historical preservation and the stuff that you've done as well is so valuable. But to go out to the community and have that as the front face, I don't want people to question it, and I think it would be very prudent of us to make that separation for everybody's benefit.
Folks, I'm thinking a couple of things here because I want to make sure that we move forward with our work for Ms. Adams and then perhaps come back to this conversation. But for the Melrose open house, I don't necessarily think we need the fire department board for that one, given exactly what you said, that Melrose already operates efficiently and effectively and has their rural fire department. It might not be necessary for that particular listening session. Pardon?
I think it will, because
Okay.
if we change any language in the charter, it may change how Melrose operates. Isn't that correct? If we do something within the charter, it could change how they operate.
If we changed everything, I think what we were talking about with one of the options being that we would dissolve some volunteer fire departments that were in the city limits. I think that was one of your possible things, correct? Is that what you're saying? That we would, they would have the city fire department and then we'd have the volunteer fire department, so we likely might have to dissolve those that are within city limits, is how I'm understanding the issue.
Except we technically, and this is a technical issue, don't have city limits. That's the crux and part of the whole problem is those Home Atherton and them were probably outside of city limits when originally the city limits were small, maybe not, but technically we don't have city limits, so I believe that if we were to change language in the charter, it could affect Melrose and how they operate.
Good point. I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking about, and so, you know, by all means, please push back. I'm feeling like to be effective and listening well and getting information that will help us make good decisions, I feel like we need a little bit more internal debate about what it is that we want to bring forward for changes. I don't feel like, you know, I'm going back to what's in the charter, and then I'm going back to this document from the fire departments and the other documents that we got from Fire Chief Osborne and their recommended changes, and I don't know that this body has deliberated any of those. And so is it prudent to deliberate first and then come back, you know, add some more listening sessions and then come back to asking? But to Chad's point, to maybe just ask a general question with our citizenry to say, are there changes you would like to see? Have you heard of problems or issues? Is there something you would like to see changed? And there might be ideas like Mr. Thielen was saying that are going to come from, you know, somebody that is just thinks structurally and has, program management experience or something, would say, well, this is how I would structure it if I were in leadership. We might be better if it being a little more open. Ms. McCormick.
Well, we certainly haven't debated yet any of the other proposed changes. We just know that more specifically how those are structured. But I think, so we do have to keep it general. This is a listening session where we're getting what the public wants. And if you don't think the public doesn't have some ideas, because it's been in the press, about how they feel about the volunteer fire departments or how they feel about the paid, I think we're wrong. But I do think it's important for us to provide, like you presented some background to your questions about what the possibilities could be. And I think what we have to be very clear about is that at this point, we need to acknowledge the volunteer fire departments. It can't, that we have to think about what their role within the fire department is going to be. And so we just can't have the paid fire people, someone from the paid department there. We have to have, if we're going to have somebody there, somebody from the volunteer fire department do. And I think we have come up with a couple of points that I think we could have a beginning of discussion with them in. And that's, do we want to keep the charter as it kind of is with a fire department chief that's ahead of everything? Or do we, want to have what Ben has suggested? Maybe that's just the two starting points that will get people talking about other alternatives. But, we're there to, it's a difficult role. I don't think we're there to explain necessarily in any great detail what the conflicts is. We're not going to, talk about 40 years of this or who's concerned about safety and who's not. But I think we have to give some kind of background about what the options could be, just a basic thing on what options could be, and those are the things that could be enough to get them started to start talking about it, because people may have read the papers, people may have gone to a public, some of the things. We can't assume that people haven't been thinking about this, because I think they have, because it was such a big issue. So I don't even know if we need somebody there to sit down and explain. If we're going to explain the other things, like what the current structure is of the government, that we have this chief executive and there's a proposal for this. But those discussions, we all agree that if we have those discussions, we're being very matter of fact. We're not telling them we think this would be better than that. So these are the options for maybe how we can address the problems with our structure of the fire departments within the charter. And here are two things, and we just present them matter of fact. I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent, but.
I'll take Mr. Silk, and then I'll take you, Mr. Dennehy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Mary is exactly right. I think we just need to have, and I hate to even use this term, but just some common sense to get some ideas out there and just listen to the public. As Ms. Perdue-Dolan mentioned, if my testimony at the state is a conflict of interest, I totally respect that and understand that. But that goes along with 30 other career department members and 30 other volunteer members that we're going to be running out of people. I think we just need to listen. We're set at such beginning stage. Let's listen to what the community wants. And it doesn't need to be a specialized person, because my fear is that if you bring a volunteer and a career department member there to speak about it, you are already painting the picture of what side am I going to pick, instead of the true issue of public safety. So let's just listen to what they have to say with some topics, and then go from there. And I agree, we need to have more conversation, but I feel like we're making it too complicated with an issue that is very complicated and hasn't been fixed, and we need to start at the very beginning and just listen to people and make it very easy.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, thank you, both Mary and Chad, for those really thoughtful comments and all of you too. I think maybe what we should do is maybe make it a general question in the first couple of listening sessions with the caveats that maybe start the discussion, and through those debates, through those comments, through those questionnaire or questions back to us, then can start making an outline or a more specific questionnaire as other listening sessions go forward. So we're going to start basically with an open question. What do you think of the structure of the Butte-Silver Fire Department? And that's going to elicit a lot of comments. And then we're going to have specific questions of, do you think the current structure of having the Director of Fire Services is appropriate for both paid and volunteer? Do you think there should be another form that is more conducive to better communications between the both? And then from there, whatever the comments might be, we can glean a little additional sort of questions for other open houses. I think it's a compromise. I think if we're here to discuss it, Chad's right. We've been discussing this for 40-some years, and we haven't got anywhere other than we're the paid, we're the volunteers. I don't like how it's structured. I don't like how you're structured, and we're getting nowhere. And it's a hard decision. This is going to be, this is it, right? So I think we should start something general, like Mary and Chad said, with some sort of discussion, some sort of prodding on of additional discussions, and then come up with whatever additional information we'll need from the public, just as a compromise, or at least maybe something we can go forward with.
Ms. Casey?
A thought I have, I like Dan's be in general, but another thought is maybe we don't have to man the stations. Maybe we are just there in the crowd, and if they have questions, they can ask whoever they want. If they want to go ask Chad, they can. If they want to talk to Mary or Dan, they can do that. And maybe we have these boards and there's a few points on them, and then we're just there to answer questions, and they can go to whomever they want. That might be another thought and we can always adjust our listening or our open houses after the first couple if they're not working, but that might be a thought too, because if I come in as the public and I want to talk to Chad about the fire, we shouldn't be stopping them from that. And so maybe if we don't necessarily man the stations, but we're there and mingling, and they can talk to whoever they want. That would be just a thought too.
Shanna, do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, I guess just a couple of thoughts. I think this discussion is really good. I think it's okay to go to the public with where you are in the process, right? You don't have answers, you don't have it figured out, and that's okay. So I kind of like the last couple of discussions here to just kind of go with some general questions. We can put some bullets at the station, and then we will adapt, right? So we're going to go do this first one, see how it goes, and then we're going to adapt and get better as we go. And we can change the boards, we can change the format, we can adjust. So we're going to learn, and things will change throughout the process too as you guys keep deliberating. So, and I think something Chad said earlier, like nobody should be afraid of conflict or people saying things that are going to be, we're going to hear what we're going to hear from the public, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. So I think I have what I need to kind of get drafts of these out to everybody. And I think the mingling, as long as there's somebody there at all times that can kind of help facilitate the discussion, I think that'll be important. So people may want to write their comments, and we'll have, the ability for them to do that. And people may just want to talk to somebody and leave, and they don't want to write anything down. So we just want to make sure everybody has, and you guys and me and whoever's there is able to kind of jot those comments down and capture everything. So
That was going to be a question I had, is how are we capturing the comment? So you're thinking rather informally, either they submit it written or it's notes that we're taking when we're listening.
yeah, I mean, I guess I was thinking, we will have comment forms where they can provide their information, and then just open, forms front and back that they can provide whatever comments they want. And then also, I think people will be needing to take notes during the meeting and just get those to me.
And then the survey would be available there for people to QR code and take it.
Exactly.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is great. I really enjoyed this discussion and trying to zero in on what we need to do initially. And I love the idea of the boards to get sticky notes or any ideas people have and stick it on them. And then also for us to make sure we have a little pad of paper or pen, and if someone has a great comment, even if we think it's a bad comment, whatever the comment is, just write it down, and then we can cull all that information. But I think just listening and getting the information, and I'm so thankful that you said about, I think we were trying to zero in too much on fire, and I don't want to pit one against the other, so I like the idea of pulling back and saying, what do you guys think? What does the public think? So I think the ability to do those Post-it notes, like you said, Raylyn, are so important, and then gathering those comments from the different sections of the community, I think is going to be great.
So moving on to the dates, if we can. So Shanna, you'll get us drafts back of what content's going to be on there, and please be responsive on email so she can get those printed and ready. But moving on to dates, I apologize. I thought I kept saying Tuesday nights were okay, but if the will of the group is to have these on the 7th and the 14th, and then we're likely to move that first public hearing then from August 25th. Would we want to move that one forward maybe 2 weeks and try to put a couple more sessions in, or what are our best ideas here? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's a great idea to move the public hearing. I think people need to start to get comfortable with what we're doing, basic questions, basic information, so then they can bring it to their friends and family, and it's just kind of like a ripple effect of information. So then, because I think people will get a little bit intimidated with the idea of a structured public hearing and that there's no dialogue. I want to make sure people feel like they're heard at least, and to know that just because we're having this first public hearing, it's not the end all. It's just the continuation of what our role is to get to November of 26. But yeah, to add in some more public comments and things is vitally important.
So looking in timeline too, we have a draft report that is due, and that is a firm deadline. So looking at that draft report deadline, we probably need to.
Madam Chair,
Go
the
ahead.
draft report deadline isn't a firm deadline. I think our firm deadline is in July when we want to put something on the ballot. So that's where we get to the firm deadline. I was trying to, when I was doing that, give us enough time to draft the report, not knowing how well Matt can write and whip it out. No, but Matt's stepping. Though that isn't a firm deadline, I think we just have to be done and have our hearings and do that, and everything is that July. I believe it's July deadline.
In the draft report, we were looking at trying to have that November-ish, correct?
Yes.
I think even with that, still that timeline, and I'm just cautious. Like I've worked projects enough to know that if you don't set a firm deadline, you're never going to meet any deadline. So I'm going to say our draft report November deadline is hard for us. But I think if we could maybe push our public meeting to somewhere around September 22nd, or public hearing somewhere around September 22nd, that gives us opportunity to have at least 2 more listening sessions. And then instead of meeting every Monday night, if we're having an open house, I would say our job that week is open house, and then maybe we have a work session, and then we go to 2 more open houses. Does that sound like a reasonable rhythm for everybody? So if we hold the 7th and the 14th still, that would put us the 18th of August as maybe having a work session, and then we could be back on for public listening somewhere on the, maybe we take the week of the 25th, and we also work that week, and then move into September, say 4th, 11th, somewhere in there for more listening sessions.
I won't be available on August 14th, but I mean,
Okay.
as long as we have all the members, but I have a vacation that's been planned.
Okay. I also have a conflict on the 14th, so if there's another night that week, I would prefer it. But again, it's to the will of the group, so I'm not married to the 14th.
And
What-
Madam
what
Chair,
dates?
these dates were just thrown out there,
Could we do
so
it
I think it's open to the
Like
group.
the 15th on a Wednesday? Or 13th? 13th is Wednesday? Could we do it on the 13th? Would that work for everyone?
It's in conflict with the Council of Commissioners meeting, but Ms. Dolan?
I was going to say, not only that, but now that we're in school session, and then there's some activities that are usually on Wednesday nights with school kids, and so I would maybe defer to like Tuesday or Thursday might be a better night, just, and also because of the council conflict with the council commissioners meeting. But yeah, I just think that's going to be great.
Yeah, that's true. I just feel responsible as a chair that I should probably be there. So if we stay on the 7th, and then there's two of us that couldn't make the 14th, and we try the 12th, would that be amenable? August 7th, August 12th? That seems to work. Okay, and then we would have work session here in normal time at 5 o'clock on the 18th, and then probably work session on the 25th. Then we would move into September, say 4th and 11th, or 4th and 9th if we do Thursday, Tuesday, or see, let me look.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
and Shauna, do we want to do like any noontime open houses? Do those draw people? Or, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, so there was definitely some discussion. Summer is hard generally, and summer nights are kind of tough. So you could do two, a noon and an evening. That's been a suggestion.
Those of you that are retired, I think, would be fine. It's a little harder for me to pull myself away during the middle of the day once the semester starts, but willing to do what others can do. Mr. Silk?
If the noon does work, maybe the 7th and the 12th, maybe we should just try to do the 7th and the 12th at 5:30 to 7:30. Then we'll be able to have the 18th and 25th to deliberate if it's worth it, if it's not worth it, because then we'll have an idea. Because I honestly have no idea. Well, I have an idea of how this is going to go, but then we can get our feet under us a little bit to see if that's going to work. So I would suggest at least the first two to keep them at night.
Madam Chair, Tuesdays are off for me.
Okay. Anybody else have conflicts with Tuesday, or? And I guess, Ben, you and I could divide and conquer. I'll take Tuesdays, you can take Thursdays. Okay.
Some Tuesdays, I have meetings on the second and third Tuesdays.
Okay.
But, I can always skip those meetings for fun.
So if we did the September 11th and September 16th, that would be off of your second Tuesday? Okay. Okay. I'm trying to remember what I've said now. Do you remember what I've said?
So I think we're hoping for August 7th That would be in Melrose. August 12th in Butte. And then maybe the 11th and the 16th. One thought would be to do one at Tech, and then another one in Butte. I mean, Tech's in Butte, but just trying to grab a different demographic.
I think we can also finalize maybe those September dates unless you wanted them for the flyer.
It would be nice,
Okay.
you know, to be able to tell everyone, these are the listening sessions, these are the dates, the times, the place, so they can say, oh, that one works for me, you know, and kind of know. Same, I guess, with the public hearing. It might be kind of nice to put that on the flyer too.
Okay. So we do have 2 members absent tonight, so if we can put the September dates in an email, and I'll ask them to finalize, you know, no later than end of week here, so we can get that stuff out. And then our public hearing, we were looking at the end of September, at like September 22nd. And I think that's a good date to a good, yeah. And we should have everything for the ADA assistance for electronics by then too. So that would be good. So let's set September 22nd for the public hearing date and work backwards on those other 2 listening sessions. And I will promise you that we'll, if they don't respond, I will call them to get a response to you.
Oh, that sounds good.
Madam Chair, Ramsey School is sometimes a good place to draw some of those folks from the Rocker, Fairmont area for that too, because we're at one end of the county with Melrose, and then we come directly into Butte. So we've had, the Ramsey School has been, as long as their gym's available, has been really good about leaving us use it, or Butte-Silver at different times. So that might be another option of where to have a meeting.
Do you want to do one of those Butte ones then, maybe at the Ramsey School? So we'd have Melrose, Butte, Tech, Ramsey.
And I think we need one at the EOC. Think we need to get out on the flats, not to keep adding meetings, but either we skip the Tech and go to the EOC because we have the Butte Brewery, or we add one. It's whatever, but I think we need one kind of on the flats, one uptown, and yeah, spread the love.
Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would definitely just add one, because I think Ramsey School is a great idea to get the Rocker, Fairmont, and Ramsey folks. But Tech's important, I think, and the EOC. So yeah, I mean, the more that we can get in, the better. Just to, when we get to the 22nd of September, we'll have some folks that hopefully will come and give us those opinions on the record.
Mr. Dennehy?
Madam Chair, instead of having a working session on the 18th or the 25th, those Mondays, can we move another open house in either of those 2 weeks, either the 19th or 28th, or 21st and 26th, down at the EOC, and then
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I was thinking the 18th for a work session so we can see how it went after the first 2 open houses and recalibrate if we need to. And then maybe the week of the 25th, perhaps. So that 26th or 28th, which do you prefer, 26th or 28th group? I heard 26th, so we'll go with 26. It'll just get it off that night. So we'll do 7th, 14th, work session on the 18th, 26th at Ramsey. Is that what we were saying? EOC, excuse me, EOC. And then Ramsey would be after that probably. And so we'll go September, did we say September 4th and then September 9th, or whichever way we said Tuesday, Thursday in the first couple weeks of September. But I'll get a firm answer from our other people that are absent on those September dates. Okay. All right, anything else on dates? Shanna, do you need anything else from us in terms of dates or public outreach materials?
I guess just to be clear, do we want to just stick with evening meetings at this point?
I think for the first two, we said let's stick with evening meetings. I think a noon one thrown in there might be valuable. Maybe the third meeting could be a noon one. You want to do that at the EOC, or would that be a good noon? No, we want a noon meeting where there's lunch. So maybe a noon meeting after the EOC one.
I mean, the tech meeting should probably be during the day. So that could definitely be a noon meeting, and we can kind of see how it goes, but.
Yeah, and there's catering available, so that might work really well actually up there. Then you could get students in because they'll come have free food. Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to go back to the initial information that you gave us, Shauna, and I think the idea of a giveaway is a great idea, and I'm hoping that's within our rules and regulations of a study commission that we're able to do that, because I think that will draw people if we have good little prizes or whatever, just to get that input. And of course, everyone loves free food, but I think that giveaways is a great idea.
Shanna, you also needed comments from us on the survey. Is that?
Yeah, so I sent that out. Do folks have comments for me? Did they want to email them, or do we want to go through question by question?
I've reviewed and I thought that it was in good shape, and I'm not sure what others have done, or, but in the interest of it's 7 o'clock, I think I would prefer that they give you their comments that they might have on the survey and that you leave with them, rather than walking through question by question. But I do see that Ms. McCormick has something she'd want to say.
Well, I just, on the general satisfaction, because I think people, you get a little confused, that maybe you could, this is really just minor, is just saying, not including structure at the end of the sentence, just say, generally how satisfied with the current Butte-Silver Bowl government. Because they don't really know what structure is until they get down into the next section.
Yeah, and I don't have the most current version in front of me, but I kind of moved some questions around to make some of that more clear. But no, that's...
Yeah, if you move the questions around so they know what structure is before they, because, you say that and then you explain what it is later, and so I found that a little confusing.
Yep.
And then otherwise, just if we could have some kind of questions about fire services. And I don't know what those are. Don't want to debate that right now, so maybe if people have suggestions, they could email them to you.
Ms. Dolan?
I was just talking to Ben. Do we have a timeline on when this survey will go out and when the deadline is to bring it back? Do we have a thought on that yet, or is that too premature?
I mean, it's just kind of been a little bit fluid. So as soon as I have approval from the commission on the questions, I can get the survey in electronic format, and then there'll be a QR code that links to the survey, and then we can start pushing it out through the open houses and on the website and through different formats. And then really it'll just be a matter of getting the answers back and processed in a timely manner for you guys to put together your draft report.
So knowing that, will we be ready with the survey QR code and everything by the 7th? Because I'd hate to go out to Melrose and not have the survey ready, but is that too tight a time frame, or are you able to do that?
No, I mean, once I get approval, it's a pretty easy process to get it, in the electronic format, so.
So I think our comments are of high value for her right away, if we can commit to that. I mean, I'll hold us here to go through them line by line if we want to, but I'd rather do that work electronically with just our feedback, because I think the survey in itself, other than it may be missing a couple of questions, it looks good. It's well written. I think it's going to gather the information we're looking for. So if we are okay and you commit to following through to get your comments to Shanna, probably no later than Wednesday. I think we can get it punched out and ready for Melrose. All right, anything else that you need from us, Shanna, in terms of feedback or this discussion for public outreach?
Nope.
Thank you for standing there for that long. You could have sat down, it's okay, but I appreciate you.
Madam Chair,
Mm-hmm.
are you going to advertise these meetings, and they'll probably have to be posted on our website as a meeting, am I correct, Matt?
I would say yes. I mean, to be honest, it's not a meeting in which you are conducting, well, you are conducting official business, but not in the sense of where you're voting on anything, or it's public outreach. But yes, for public participation purposes, and so we don't violate any open meeting laws, I would say they need to be published in the same manner that these council meetings are.
So the answer is yes. So some of the methods we've talked about are radio, will go on the website, social media. I think it would be great to get it in the paper as well. Just trying to figure out if we have enough time. And then we'll be posting flyers. So especially for like the Melrose and Ramsey, just kind of in all local locations. Yeah, and then open to other suggestions. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any other comments or things to pass on for her? Ms. Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also reach out to like the BLDC, the chamber, and their email lists, and they can push it out to their membership. Just any way we can get a vehicle out to those folks and anybody that has an email. Thanks.
All right, excellent.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on. This was under new business, and I jumped right to it. But I wanted to remind us that our questions for County Attorney Enruth were due to him last week or the week before. So if you have emailed, please try that email again. Maybe try CCing me, because we know the system is kind of being funky sometimes. If you haven't gotten those to him, please get them right away. And then I think we have a couple of big conversations we need to have. The fire department conversation is one of those. I think having those after our public listening sessions is a good idea. And then also, these nuts and bolts of how do we change the charter language if we hear from public that they want some of these changes. That's going to be a lot of the topics we'd have going forward. And then I think, Mr. Enruth, did we get a clear answer? I know that you and I had forwarded emails from the Law Center, from the MSU Law Center, on the number of ballot questions we can have, and he said we needed to defer to you in terms of interpretation, but he was thinking it really was 3 ballot questions is all that we were allowed.
Let me pull the email. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say that was, no, I don't want to say anything. Let me grab the email again, and I'll resend that to everybody.
Okay, thank you. So anyway, please follow through on that for your questions from the charter for Mr. Enruth, and then we'll try to schedule in that meeting that's going to be a comprehensive charter review. I like that we're doing it after the listening sessions, because we're going to hear from public on things they want to see. Is there any other discussion about that? Okay. We don't have a public hearing, and the other scheduled matters is that charter review, so we'll get that rolling when we have our questions to him and he has had time to review them, and we've had our public listening sessions. So our announcements are our meetings will be held every other Monday at 5, except on federal holidays, but we just changed that whole entire schedule. So I'll make sure that Kim notices that on our website for our public, so they know where to find us over the next few weeks, because we won't be necessarily right here. Any other questions or discussion for the good of the order? If not, could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Thielen. Okay, all right. Thank you, folks, and we'll see you in Melrose.